Hey, the West Hawaii market for condos is starting to shift, and so we brought in a professional to tell you guys, investors, if this is going to work or not. Travis, what are you going to tell them?
So we're going to look at a couple of condos that are actually on the market right now, and we're going to break down the cash flow numbers. What does it cash flow or not, using realistic, real numbers specific to the West Hawaii condo market.
There we go. Let's go. Aloha, hey, it's Julie Zeemless, 365 Hawaii with Real Broker, and I am here today with Travis Green, who is from Guild Mortgage, and we have gotten quite a few inquiries about condos, investment condos, and do they make sense financially? And right now, the housing market is starting to see some softening, and the condo market in West Hawaii is definitely going softer. And so this is very timely for Travis to come in and tell you if this is a good opportunity right now to buy a condo. Go for it.
Yeah, so what we thought we would do is look at a couple of examples that you could actually buy right now using the current list price, and then realistic numbers for the expenses, the carrying cost of owning a condo.
The true cost of ownership.
Right, and so, you know, if property investing were super easy, all of us would do it. And also if it like made financial sense all the time for most properties, all of us would do it. And so, you know, when I talk to people who are investing in real estate, especially in condos in West Hawaii, you know, you might kiss a lot of frogs before you find Prince Charming. And what I mean by that is you should be analyzing every deal. Like if you're looking at this from a financial standpoint of like, am I going to make money or lose money? Is it going to pay for itself? Am I going to break even? You should be analyzing every single deal that you're considering. And so what I've done is I used a calculator. There's a lot of them online, but I used a deal analysis tool to look at some different scenarios. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is like, do they make sense financially? Do they make money or lose money?
Right. And also, in terms of losing money, we've had this conversation before. If you guys want to see a longer conversation, go back to the video that we did when we did a mortgage market update. But sometimes when you're losing a little bit of money each month, you also have to take into effect that sometimes the equity will start to build over time, right? And sometimes there's a kind of like a cost of holding real estate too, right?
Yeah, and you know, rates are what they are today. That's a big part of this equation. And so, and just as a disclaimer, I'll tell you right now, I'm just across all these examples, I'm using 7.5%.
Because that's where we are right now.
Ish, you know, something like that.
At least for 2025-ish.
Yeah, it's January, it's 2025, 7.5%-ish, you know, on a 30-year fix for these types of deals. You know, your situation will vary, you know, it might be higher or lower. But yeah, you know, the other thing beyond appreciation of the property is the cost like of rent tends to go up over time too, right? So, you know, today's rental incomes are not frozen in amber over time. Like it can go up with appreciation, and interest rates whenever they go down. The beauty of, you know, the U.S. mortgage market is that you can refinance typically without penalty to a lower interest rate and then lock that in for the rest of your ownership. And you can do that every time the rates drop. So as long as the condo remains financeable. But you know, so, you know, you might start off even or slightly, you know, losing money on a monthly basis on a condo, but over time, as you refind to lower rates, as the average rent goes up, you might get to a place where it kind of steadies itself and starts actually making money on a positive cash flow basis.
Okay, so I just want to give you guys that little aspect of holding on to something, which I think most investors know how to do that. But there are some people that we've been talking to who are newer investors, people like in their 40s who are thinking maybe now is the time to buy a condo so they can hang on to it, so they can retire into it later on. So that's another reason why we're doing this too. It's just to basically just help people who are just looking at this as kind of like a first-time basis too. So.
Yeah, and so if we're talking specifically about, you know, condos in Kona, that's what I was looking at. You need to kind of know some things to take into consideration when you're evaluating this. So let's talk about short-term vacation rental condos. So right now, I have it on good authority from kind of a prominent local property manager that manages a lot of short-term vacation rental properties, that vacancy right now for most of those is between 35 and 40%. That means that your condo is going to be occupied 60 to 65% of the time, right? Throughout the year, or across the entire year.
Right.
So if you are analyzing a deal and trying to put numbers together, you need to be realistic about your vacancy rate, right? So if we're talking short-term vacation rentals, you should probably assume 35 to 40%. That can change if visitor numbers increase and people come here and it stays a favorable environment for people to stay in a short-term vacation rental. But I think it's safe to be very conservative on all of your numbers.
Okay.
Another thing to take into account when you're putting your deal together or analyzing a deal are property management fees. It's very important with a short-term vacation rental condo that you understand what that cost is. For my analysis, I'm using 20% of gross rent,
Okay.
which is pretty standard for a short-term vacation rental.
Yeah.
And that's a service on island that's going to usually handle bookings, answer phone calls of people who are staying there, turn it over, have it cleaned, make sure that it's presentable and review management, all that stuff, right? So 20% of gross rents, and then you need to factor in things like taxes, homeowners insurance, HOA dues, and maintenance and repairs.
Maintenance and repairs.
So when you're thinking of maintenance and repairs, usually the rule of thumb for a lot of investors is 1% of the property's value per year. Right?
Oh.
So if we're going to look at a $400,000 property, we're going to look at $4,000 per year, or $333 a month.
Oh.
Right. So you don't have to budget that because you don't have to because some years you might not spend all that much. Some years you're going to spend more than that. But again, it's just a way to get you thinking about the fact that it's not just rents in and mortgage payment out. There are other things that go into owning one of these.
Right.
So where do you want to go from here? Should we just jump into some numbers?
Sure. But also, I'm thinking also on this one, just because once you become an investor, you're also an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right? You could also lower the price a little bit of your condo to make it rent out faster, more often.
Yeah.
And then you'd fill it up 80-90% of the time based on pricing.
Yep.
So it's not always get set in stone. Okay.
That's why you want to find one of these good calculators and you can play with those metrics, right? So, because it'll spit out the calculation for you, but you could say, okay, well, what if my vacancy rate is only 20% or 18% or something like that, but my nightly average rent is not $250, it's $170. So you can play with those numbers and see, where does it make sense? Where does that kind of tip over to lowering the price and increasing vacancy, or decreasing vacancy? When does that make more sense than just assuming 35 to 40% and going with the average nightly rate?
There you go. And also your property management companies. I know our personal friend who does that.
Yep.
You can talk to them.
Yeah.
And they will tell you information about that.
Yeah, exactly. So again, just it's important to keep those things in mind. It's something that especially people who are new to property investing, especially condo investing, might not think about. They just look at the what's my mortgage payment and HOA dues, how much is this going to rent for, and then they're off to the races.
Right.
And then they might get down the road and be like, I'm losing money hand over fist. Like what is
Then
happening?
they're off to the races to sell it 2 years later.
Yeah.
So that's what exactly we're trying to also, you guys, seriously, buying a condo in Kona and doing all this stuff, it takes time, energy, and money, and we want to save you from making a mistake that 2 years from now you're going to say, I wish I would have known.
Right.
So again, thank you for bringing the word of the financial gods to the world.
Yeah, so the one I'm looking at here, short-term vacation rental, I'm assuming about an average nightly rent of $250.
Okay, it's average.
Right, so $250, and at 35% vacancy, that's roughly $7,600 a month gross. Okay. Obviously, during Christmas and Ironman, this is going to rent for a lot more than that, and then during the low season, it's going to be a little bit less than that. But $250 a night, 65% occupied, $7,600 a month. Okay, property management fees on that about $1,520 a month. Repairs and maintenance about $333 a month. Taxes on this property about $409 a month. Homeowners insurance, that's going to vary, but I'm using $50 a month, and HOA dues on this one are $765. So monthly operating expenses, $3,077. Okay, so we said the 7,600. Oh, sorry, vacancy 2,661. But so 3,077. That's our
every single month it's going to cost you
operating expense, right?
Okay.
But again, taxes, insurance, HOA are part of that. Okay. So say we buy it for $400,000. And we put down 30%, so that's $120,000, right? Your closing costs are going to vary a little bit depending on the interest rate that you choose or the bank that you work with or whatever. But assume maybe 2% of the cost of the home ish, something like that, 1.5%, 2%. In this case, I just put in $9,000. That's all your closing costs, lender fees, title fees, whatever. Get a real loan quote from a lender for your situation. This is a very broad brush I'm painting with. Yours could be higher or lower. Mortgage payment at 7.5% on a 30-year fixed, $1,957. That's principal and interest. What winds up happening with all of that is monthly cash flow before taxes is negative $93 a month. That's putting down 30%. Okay, and having a fixed rate at 7.5%, you lose $93 a month. To give you an idea of like being cash flow positive, same deal, same numbers, same assumptions, but 50% down, so $200,000 down instead of 120. All of a sudden, you're making $466 a month.
Oh.
You're cash flow positive. But that is something that you should understand if you're going to be buying a short-term vacation rental condo here, or really any investment condo. Is like the days of being cash flow positive at 20% or 25% down. Really hard to see how that works here.
Yeah.
50% down sometimes can do it, sometimes not. But
No, how about when people come in with cash and they're just going to buy it down? Just boom. I'm using it for investment property as a retiree who just sold their house in California with a bunch of cash in my hand, and I'm just going to buy it outright.
Yeah. Well, then your debt service payment goes away, right? And so that's all freed up for positive cash flow.
Yeah.
So the reason some people don't want to do that is they like to have the interest to write off on taxes, right?
See,
Caveat that I'm not a tax professional, but when you buy one of these and you report it on your taxes, it goes onto your Schedule E, and so you report your gross rents received, number of days it was in service for rent. You report, you start with gross rents and then you get to subtract a lot of things. And that's like interest paid, mortgage interest paid to banks, insurance, taxes, maintenance and repairs, management fees, HOA dues, and then a little thing called depreciation, which is a formula that gets applied. And so even with a cash flow positive property, something that's making you money, oftentimes you will show a loss on your taxes, which is super convenient for reducing your tax burden. And then if you're like actually losing money, you might have a really big loss on your taxes, because in addition to showing the IRS that I'm not making money on this, you get to deduct all the other expenses as well. So that can be good for people who maybe are high wage earners or self-employed or something like that, or have a large capital gain in another area of their life, to offset their tax burden, right? So some people aren't, sometimes being cash flow positive, making more money than you're paying out on the property to operate it, is not the most important thing, right? So because everybody's different. So some people are like, I want to clear $500 a month, or I want it to not cost me any money.
Right.
I want blah, blah, blah. I want to break even. And some people are like, what's the damage, right? Like, what's it going to cost me? How much am I going to have to come up with out of pocket to operate this thing? And then if that's a tolerable thing and it's a property that they like and maybe they want to use it for a couple weeks out of the year or whatever it is, that's the value proposition for them.
You get a place to stay. You can write off your trip because you're coming and checking out your investment experience, right?
Right.
You get a chance to actually replace the dishwasher when you're here.
Motivations.
Yeah. So I'd say that if you're going to be investing, definitely you take the thing and then you get yourself a good person to run those numbers through.
Yep.
And your tax advisor, it sounds like also, right?
Yes.
Yeah. To say, okay, how does this really work in the total big scheme of your investment portfolio, right?
Yeah. How much could this help me? Right. So even if if here are the numbers, here are the expenses, here's what I'm projecting to cash flow or lose, what does that do to my taxes? And maybe they can give you some advice. That's like probably a real tax professional, right?
Yeah.
And not just like
the one that we didn't have when we bought a condo.
Yeah, not the TurboTax extra $47 for live chat support. They're probably not going to walk you through this, but
I know. I'll tell you. My really smart friends, of course, they have actual financial advisors with tax professionals. So get yourself one. If you're younger coming into this, seriously, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would have gotten a little bit more professional help. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's super important. It's super important. So that's a short-term vacation rental. That's actually one of the more favorable ones. I obviously did not look at every single condo available in Kona. I'm sure there are deals that pencil better than that.
Yeah,
but
that's a $500,000 condo.
400,000.
That's a $400,000 condo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are usually going to be like 1-1s.
Yep. This
Okay.
one is.
Okay. So just so you guys know too, that the average price for a 2-2 right now is running closer to 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. 100%. I looked at another one. This is in Keaho.
Okay.
It's a 3-bedroom, $779, and for this one we're looking at higher rents, but same thing for like vacancy, 20% for short-term vacation rental management. HOA dues on that one very high, 1635. But that one, even at 30% down, I mean, the numbers I plugged in, 7.5%, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's negative $2,100 a month. So,
Because sometimes people say, I thought you said this because you're the some people, that sometimes when you buy a more expensive property, because it brings in more money, that sometimes throwing having a more expensive property sometimes can be more profitable than trying to save pennies and get something smaller.
right.
But not for that one.
Well, not from what I could tell from average, like Air DNA info, right?
Okay.
Air DNA is like a Zestimate for short-term vacation rentals, but like Air DNA for the nightly rent on average just doesn't support this being cash flow positive, almost at all.
Wow.
You'd almost have to pay
So how much
cash.
are they charging for a 3-bedroom house in Keaho?
This is a condo.
A condo, I mean.
But yeah, $1,635 HOA and $754 a month property taxes.
Yeah, but what's the income?
The income, I have it at $10,645 a month before vacancy, right?
Okay.
So about $7,000 a month.
Okay.
But operating expenses before mortgage payment, $5,208, and then we have a mortgage payment, just principal and interest, that's $3,800 a month. So it's this is one that if your average nightly rent is higher than I'm estimating, that's going to close some of the gap. Or if your vacancy is lower than what I'm estimating, that's going to close some of the gap. Or if you have a mix of those and put down more money.
Okay.
So that's a tough proposition to go up to that point. I do also think, I wonder if some of these like luxury ones that are $2.5, $3 million, if those kind of start to make sense at some point. But the cost of money is still just so expensive. Like it's so, your debt service is going to be super high. And again, unless you're putting down, kind of a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah. So that's what's happening here. Before it made sense to come in when it was 2%, 3%, 4%, because there are multi-million-dollar condos up in Montalani.
Yeah.
And now they can't seem to get out of them. They're being on the market for a long time because then people trying to come in, unless they have cash, it doesn't make sense at 7%.
Yeah, or 7.5% or 8% or whatever it is.
Don't say that.
Well, there's the world as we wish it was, and then there's the world as it is. And so, yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing to invest in right now successfully. However, we started off the video talking about the shift in the condo market here. Well,
the
kind of
prices
everywhere.
are going to go down.
Well, even if that's not necessarily the case or not happening all that much or all that fast, how many condo open houses were there today in Kona? 30?
Yeah, there was
31?
Yeah.
There were 27 on Caravan, and then there were a bunch that didn't even make it on Caravan that were also open.
Last time we checked, there was 165 condos for sale in Kona right now. It's like...
So, you have the opportunity right now to do real deal analysis, to go through, take the time, just like anything else, like, anything in business or work or whatever, investing, takes time and due diligence and effort to have a good outcome. So you, the buyer, finally now have time. That's what's been granted to you in all of this. You did not have the time in 2021. You just had to offer and hope you got it and hope it worked out, right?
And you were fighting with every other investor.
Everyone else, every primary resident, second home and investor who was maybe paying cash. Well, now you have the opportunity and the time and the space to slow down, get some numbers, gather some information,
talk to your
get some
advisors,
quotes from property management, get some historical rental data from the current property manager if that's available, run your own analysis, put it in your spreadsheet, run it by some trusted people, and see if it makes sense. But you didn't have time for that before because you would lose out on every deal.
Right.
Now you have time to figure it out. And it might, if you're looking for one that is as close to profitable every month as possible for the least amount of money out of your pocket, it's probably out there. That's a needle in a haystack deal, but you have the time and space to find that needle if you are willing to do all the work.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. So that's good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish
absolutely.
I wish I could look at the audience and say, do you have any questions? But if you do have questions, you can drop them in the comments.
Yeah.
And Travis will definitely check that out. Also, if there's enough people who have comments, if you guys want to put them in there, we can actually do a live Zoom that you can actually talk to Travis as we talk about this whole thing moving forward, as we see what happens with the prices in condos. Because when it does start to come down a little bit, and what the story is, we're going to have this conversation with the housing market, is the HOA fees.
Yep.
They're just, they are what they are. And so they're probably not going to come down. It's called the cost of doing business at these different organizations, and that's what it is, right?
Yeah. Insurance is the story of a lot of this. Very, 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 very costly and devastating natural disasters like the fires in LA.
Florida.
Yeah, they're not.
Lahaina.
They're not slowing down. They're not happening less frequently, and they're not getting less expensive. Right.
Right.
They're happening more often at bigger scale and causing more financial damage. And so, as long as that is the case, the increase in insurance premiums, unless the whole insurance industry is reorganized somehow.
Yeah, or the state comes in.
Yeah, but again, it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
It's a ton of money we're talking about, hundreds of billions of dollars probably just for this one fire or the series of fires in LA.
Right.
So, the cost of insuring these properties, especially very valuable properties, is just it's high, and that's what contributes a lot to the HOA dues. Is because of the master insurance policies.
Right. On the other side, if you guys want to hide someplace away from a lot of those crazy natural disasters, I can sell you an actual home that you can live here full time. It's pretty
Nice. It's pretty nice here. It's pretty nice here. There are houses with Ohanas, ADUs.
Yes, and then you can
rent those out.
Rent those out. In fact, we've talked about this before. We've done a video about using rental income in your own home to actually offset the cost of being able to live in Hawaii. So
put some nurses in there.
Yeah, and
Why
then you're
not?
like, or your kids.
Or your kids. Yeah.
So thank you. We appreciate
thank
this.
you.
I think that there's not a lot of people talking about this in Kona on this subject, and so I hope that you guys have enjoyed this knowledge that Travis has brought to you. And we'll drop Travis's information below, and he's open to consulting, and he's helped a variety of our clients, and he's amazing. Obviously, you can tell he's very knowledgeable. And to learn more about what's happening with mortgage rates, tune in once a month. Travis also works with us on our island-wide real estate and mortgage update, and we do that as on the third Thursday of the month. And in fact, we're doing it today. And hopefully that, I don't know if we're going to see a different change in the interest rates, but 2025 seems to be an animal of its own. We never know what's going to happen next. So
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so you guys stay tuned, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.
Aloha.